Hey, this is Professor Perez. Today we're going to work on absolute value. Of course, we got to get Charlie out. He better be ready to go. Hey, Charlie, ready to go? Yeah, all right, here we go, right there. Absolute value. Absolute values actually represent distance. That's why they're always positive. That's true. So absolute value represents a distance. Now, here we go. The absolute value of -3. Notice the symbol for absolute value is these two bars around that -3. So that is the absolute value of -3. Well, the absolute value of -3 represents the distance, Charlie, between 0 and -3 on a number line. So, Charlie, if somebody asks you, how far is it from here to the grocery store? What are you going to say? 5 miles? Yeah, it's about 5 miles. You're not going to tell them it's -5 miles. Right? Distances are always positive. That's why absolute values are always positive, right? Okay, now, if we look at the number line here, Charlie, how far apart are -3 and 0 on the number line? What's the distance between them? 3. It is 3, and that would be your answer. So, let's do this one, the absolute value of 3. How far apart is 3 and 0 on the number line, Charlie? 3. 3 units, it's right there. So the absolute value of 3 is 3. There you go. How about the absolute value of -10, Charlie? -10 is over here, and 0 is over there. How far apart are they? 10. 10. So the absolute value of -10 is 10. There you go. All right, how about the absolute value of -3 plus 5? Well, before you do the absolute value, you've got to simplify what's inside, or do the operation that's inside. In this case, it's an addition problem. Charlie, what's -3 plus 5? 2. It's 2. Now, you have the absolute value of 2. What is the absolute value of 2, Charlie? 2. It's 2 because the distance between 0 and 2 is 2. That's it. Now, over there, absolute value of -3 subtract 5. Again, do the operations that are inside the absolute value first. Now, Charlie, what's a -3 subtract 5, Charlie? -8. -8. And so now, what is the absolute value of -8? 8. It's 8. There you go. All right. Now, let's move on. We're going to move on to another concept called the opposite. And this is where students kind of get confused because you're going to hear me say opposite and negative. We're so used to saying negative when it comes to an opposite, but opposites actually has something to do with distance. You'll see right now. Now, here we're asked, what is the opposite of 3? Well, the opposite of 3 is -3. What does that mean? Well, both 3 and -3 each are a distance of 3 from 0 on the number line. Watch. Here's a number line here. 3 is over there. It's a distance of 3 from 0. -3 is over here, a distance of 3. So -3 and 3 are called opposites of each other. Just like 4 and -4 would be opposites of each other, 5 and -5 would be opposites of each other. Now, so here's a question here. What is the opposite of 5? Well, if we think of a number line, 5 is over there. What is opposite of 5, Charlie? -5. It's this -5. Remember, 5 is a distance of 5 from 0 on that side. On this side, -5 is a distance of 5 from 0. So they are opposites of each other. And so if somebody asks you, Charlie, what is the opposite of -5? What would you say? Opposite of -5 is what? 5 is the 5. Okay? It's very simple when they ask you this in words, right? What's the opposite of 5? -5. What's the opposite of -5, Charlie? 5. 5. Well, how do you ask this question using math symbols? That's where it gets tricky. So pay close attention, Charlie. Here we go. Right here, we have a negative or an opposite sign. I'm going to read it as an opposite. That is the opposite of 5. That's what that statement is asking you. What is the opposite of 5, Charlie? -5. -5. That's right. We will soon find out an opposite, taking the opposite of a number is just like multiplying a number by -1. We'll talk about multiplication with negative numbers in the next video. All right, so the opposite of 5 is -5, right? Okay, Charlie. Now, what's the opposite of -5? 5. It's a positive 5. That's right. The opposite of a negative number, right? The opposite of a negative number will always be positive. That's sometimes called the double negative rule. And really, we can think of it as the the basis of why a negative times a negative is a positive. Okay, we'll get to that in the next video. Anyway, opposite of 5, negative 5. The opposite of negative 5 is a positive 5. Okay, let's do some problems now. Charlie, what's the opposite of 3? Negative 3. Negative 3, that's it. What's the opposite of negative 3? Positive 3, that's 3. Okay, you can think of this as a double negative rule. Negative times negative is positive, that works. All right, now be careful with this one. This is the opposite of the absolute value of 3. The first thing you have to do is you've got to evaluate the absolute value. You've got to take that absolute value. Remember, order of operations never talked about absolute values, did it? Order of operations was parentheses, exponents, multiplication and division done in order working left to right, and then addition and subtractions done in order working left to right. That was order of operations. Now, what is the absolute value of 3, Charlie? 3. It's 3. So notice, all we've done is we've evaluated the absolute value of 3. Don't forget we got that opposite or negative sign. You got to bring that down. And now the question becomes, just like this first one, that's asking you, what is the opposite of 3? It is negative 3. And there you go. That's this one over here. Now, pay close attention to this, Charlie. That is the opposite of the absolute value of negative 3. That's different from this question up here. This question is saying, what's the opposite of negative 3? It's positive 3, right? That's asking you what's the opposite of the absolute value of negative 3. Well, what is the absolute value of negative 3, Charlie? 3. It's 3, okay? And don't forget, you could bring down your negative sign, or opposite. And now it becomes, what's the opposite of 3? It's a negative 3. So be very careful and think about the difference between that absolute value problem at the end and this one here. This is a double negative rule. That's not a double. That's a absolute value. It's the opposite of an absolute value, which gives you a negative number. Tricky, right? All right. Whew. Let's move on. Let's do some problems here. Now, opposite of the difference of 7 subtract 5. Well, order of operations. Do the parentheses first. What's 7 subtract 5, Charlie? 2. 2. Bring down your negative. And what's the opposite of 2? Or what's the negative of 2? You can say it that way. It's negative 2. There you go. Now, here we have a difference with a negative sign out sign, or an opposite. What's 5 subtract 9, Charlie? Negative 4. Negative 4. That's done in the parentheses. Bring down your opposite or negative sign. And what's the opposite of negative 4? It's 4. Positive 4, or double negative, however you want to think of it. Your answer is 4. Okay. Now, let's go to the next one. A little tricky here. We have an absolute value over there. Now, in the absolute value, we have a difference. What's negative 3 subtract 2, Charlie? Negative 5. That's a negative 5, right? Okay, so absolute value negative 5. Don't forget to bring down your opposite or negative sign, and don't forget you got to subtract 3 at the end. Now, next step. We've got to do that absolute value first. What's the absolute value of negative 5, Charlie? 5. 5. Bring down your negative sign. Okay, subtract 3. And now, what's the opposite of 5? Negative 5. Negative 5. And then we subtract 3. And so negative 5 subtract 3 is what, Charlie? Negative 8. Negative 8. Very nice there, Charlie. So we're going to stop right there. Now, I know this opposite, negative, and you get all confused, but you have to work it out. Everybody thinks differently. Now, get some help with your tutor, your facilitator, your teacher, your parents, or your children, and try to get this straightened out, because now we're going to move on to multiplying and dividing negative numbers. And then after that, we go to everybody's favorite subject, fractions. Anyway, we'll see you all again soon.